Right, so I want to start by talking a little bit more about this white supremacy, racist, all this garbage that's going on these days. We've seen it with Trump. We've seen it in the story I talked about yesterday in Edmonton, where Justin Trudeau talks endlessly about systemic racism, and you got Jagmeet Singh accusing literally everyone who isn't on the left of being a racist, and everything's systemically racist. Time is racist, schedules are racist, everything's racist, right? Um, but again, when it comes to this whole Trump thing, this is what Ben Shapiro put up. And again, this was from a reporter asking the Trump's press secretary questions. I believe it was yesterday. Anyway, the reporter says, "Does the president denounce white supremacism?" Press secretary reads giant list of Trump quotes doing that. Then the reporter, "Can you make a declarative statement that the president denounces it?" Press secretary, "I just did." And then they go back to, "Why won't you denounce white supremacy?" Again, they did this in 2016. They did the exact same thing last time around. They do it every time, especially um, the more principle you have when you're not on the left, the more they do this to you, right? Like they didn't do it a whole heck of a lot with the conservatives, but they did it a lot with the PPC, even though the PPC were not racist in any way, shape, or form. I mean, they had many people of color, like many. Like I showed that one picture. There was tons of them, right? Like they had Salim Mansur was one of their most prominent people running last time around. So again, this idea that they're white supremacists is, and again, here's another major contradictory view the left has. One of the endless amounts, but on one hand, they say that people of color can't be racist, right? Like that's one, and that's the way they justify the whole critical race theory thing, right? It's only white people can be racist, right? But on the other hand, whenever you have someone who's a person of color who's on the right or not on the left, they always viciously attack them, right? And not only that, they call them racist. I mean, they call Candace Owens a white supremacist. They call Ben Shapiro a Nazi, even though he's a practicing Jew. Like again, it's just pure insanity. Like again, and this is why I really can't stand the left and a lot of people that go along with their garbage is that by being on the left these days, it's a confession that you don't care how many contradictions exist. I just want my free stuff. Just give me my free stuff. I don't care what has to happen to get it, right? And again, obviously, conservatives and Republicans aren't perfect, but they're a heck of a lot better than the alternative right now. And I'm not a true lesser of two. I mean, the conservatives in Canada are a heck of a lot worse than the Republicans in the States. At least the Republicans in the States have somewhat of a spine. But nonetheless, it's just pure insanity. And this is the thing, too, that it doesn't matter how many times you condemn it, right? It doesn't matter how many times you condemn it. They will continue to spout the same garbage. You had Joe Biden, who spouted the very fine people, he literally started his campaign on. This is one of the first things he put out. It is a proven hoax. That quote was taken completely out of context. That quote went along the lines of Trump saying, I condemn the white supremacists. Aside from them, there was very good people on both sides. And when you have all these idiots trying to take that quote out of context, they take the "I condemn the white supremacist" part out, and they take it as very fine people on both sides, completely taking it out of context. And here's the thing: when you have to take people completely out of context to prove a point, you are the bad guy, right? Like you are the bad guy. If they ignore the numerous examples of Trump condemning white supremacy, you are the bad guys. You are the bad guys. And here's the other reason why I side with Trump on this one, is that if he was such a bad guy, they shouldn't have to make stuff up about him. If he was actually this horrible racist, they shouldn't have to take stuff blatantly out of context and a lot of times just flat out make stuff up. If he was such this racist guy, they would have plenty of actual examples of it, but they don't, right? Like the best examples of it are ones they have that are blatantly out of context or at the very least half truths, right? The whole kids in cages thing, even though it was started under Obama, right? Like again, it's just stuff that's grossly out of context, grossly overstated, all this kind of stuff. So anyway, the next thing to bring up is Trump has the virus. He announced it last night. And I mean, you already have plenty of people on the left that are wishing him harm. And not only that, this isn't just random people on Twitter. This is, you have Hillary Clinton's former campaign spokesman, her spokesperson. They're calling for his death. You have the Washington Post, who put out a story and then later deleted it, I believe, about, I don't know if they said that they would be happy if he died. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was very out of touch and very unclassy. That's the one thing that I do know about it. And here's the thing, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died, and there wasn't one example of a prominent Republican or conservative who was happy about it. I mean, I'm sure there's some wackos on social media that were happy, but not one person of prominence, right? Not one person, but you have plenty of prominent people who are wishing harm on Trump right now. Again, so it's just the double standard knows no bounds, and the mainstream media will never talk about it. Twitter will never ban people who post stuff like this. Facebook will never censor this kind of stuff. They never will, and that's why the double standard is so bad, because the left can do pretty much whatever they want. They can literally call for people's deaths. They can, promote violence. And if you even think about violence on the right, they ban you like that, no questions asked. Again, so it's just blatant hypocrisy. So this is from about a week ago. Florida governor lifts restrictions on restaurants and other businesses statewide. He also banned local fines against people who refuse to wear masks. Again, very good news. Obviously, it's not in Canada. And there's a couple reasons I want to talk about this. Number one being, it's very good for Florida, right? Because I think they're going to prove the lockdowns and the mandatory mask stuff to be complete bunk. This was about a week ago. If the cases don't start to go up within the next week or two, this will be just another example of the lockdowns not working. Another reason why this is important is Ontario just announced today that they have province-wide mask mandates, right? Like before, I think it was just in the big cities. Now it's province-wide mask mandates, the increased restrictions, and I'm going to laugh when it has no effect. I'm going to laugh when it has no effect. So a week from now, a week or two from now, if the cases in Florida aren't up, it's going to be another piece of evidence. In a couple of weeks, when the cases in Ontario aren't down, it's going to be another example. So look out for that. And the last thing to bring up is from Alex Burnison here, and they say a Texas Children's Hospital reports suicide attempts are soaring. We see kids every day telling us they're struggling. They wish they can go back to their normal lives, said Dr. Kia Carter, director of psychiatry at Cook's Children's. Lockdowns kill. Now, again, this is something I've brought up numerous times, but again, there's still a lot of people that they genuinely believe that there's no negative downsides to the lockdowns, to these restrictions. They genuinely believe that. And like, I don't have words for these people because they live in such a bubble, such an echo chamber, it's not even funny. And this is the thing. When people are against the lockdowns, they're not saying that they have, I mean, a lot of people say that, but I think it's very clear the lockdowns have little to no effect. I would say they have a slight effect on the spread, but I think that it's negligible, especially when you consider the amount of negative ramifications that come from them. I don't even think it's close to say that not locking down is far more benefit than locking down does. You're saving a handful of lives, mostly older people who are very close to dying anyway. And on the flip side, you are causing massive depression, massive job loss, massive economic ramifications to a larger, younger population that, again, if we're talking about saving the lives of, a 10 or a 20-year-old, you'd think that'd be more important about saving the life of the 80-year-old. Again, not that their life doesn't matter, but if I was in their position, I would gladly give up my life so someone who has the rest of their life to live with, could have theirs, right? Like this idea that we need to cause massive depression and job loss and massive economic ramifications to save a handful of older people's lives. It's just pure insanity. Like it's pure insanity. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter mainly, also BitChute and Parler, but mainly Twitter. That's the big one I'd like. Those links are in the description, so you can find them there.